The Defense Department tells him that if he's going to war, he's got to do it before the blistering desert summer.
We were moving along the path of getting a good inspection going that would probably come to fruition one way or the other. But once you start military forces flowing to the extent that we did for Iraq, it's hard to pull them back.
As the inevitable moves closer, President Bush re-argues the case and ups the ante with 16 infamous words in a State of the Union address.
The British government has learned that Saddam Hussein recently sought significant quantities of uranium from Africa.
That would be yellow cake, again. But by referring to a 6-month-old British white paper, the president does an end run around a claim discredited by his own intelligence service.
It wasn't a matter of lying about this or lying about that, but rather through the artistry of speechwriters and case presenters, conveying an impression to the American people that certain things were true.
It's a real sleight of hand, and I think it's kind to call that disingenuous.
On the heels of the president's speech, the administration plays its ultimate trump card. It tasks Secretary of State Colin Powell, its most trusted public face, its most reluctant warrior, to make the case against Saddam at the United Nations. He's given a week to pull that presentation together.
He walked in my office with a sheaf of papers in his hand, and he threw them down on my desk, and he said, "That's the script of my presentation at the United Nations." Came from Vice President's office. It was junk. It was pure junk. I was in charge of putting it together.
Powell and Wilkerson tear up the original 48-page script and start over with a team from the State Department and CIA. Director George Tenet suggests they base their presentation on the National Intelligence Estimate, which, unbeknownst to Powell, is a deeply flawed document. Still, he is wary.
We went into a room, he slammed the door shut. He said, "Sit down." And he sat down. We were the only two people in the room. He looked at me and he said, "This bullshit of contacts with Al-Qaeda has got to be taken out. It's bullshit." And I said, "I agree with you. Let's take it out." Done. Within a half an hour, Tenet comes in and explosively tells about this high-level Al-Qaeda operative who's been interrogated and admitted to these contacts. Whoa. And we put it back in.
That would be the dubious confession extracted from Ibn al-Sheikh al-Libi, the result of torture by the Egyptians.
Both of us convinced ourselves that if the intelligence community believed what we were presenting, then we had to believe it, because they were the experts.
I wrote part of his speech, and what I saw over the course of weeks, up until the night before he gave that speech, and in fact into the early morning, 1, 2 a.m., was, does this fit? Is this compelling? Who can pick a hole in this? I'm going to stand in front of 1 billion people. What I say better be the clearest and most credible information we have.
On February 5th, 2003, the moment of truth arrives.
The 4,701st meeting of the Security Council is called to order.
The world witnesses Colin Powell deliver the ultimate argument for war against Iraq.
What we're giving you are facts and conclusions based on solid intelligence. I will cite some examples, and these are from human sources.
I was at CIA headquarters, and all of us sort of gathered around the TV in the office to watch his speech live from the UN.
We have first-hand descriptions of biological weapons factories on wheels and on rails.
Those would be descriptions by the discredited witness, Curveball.
As he's talking about this and showing vials of white powder and so forth, I turned to a woman next to me who had followed this whole case of Curveball much more closely than I. I said, "What the hell is going on?" And my colleague said, "I don't know. I don't know what's going on. What is this?"
We did not know he was in Germany. We did not know he had a code name, Curveball. We did not know that no U.S. intelligence personnel had ever interrogated him.
Based on defector information, in May of 1991, Saddam Hussein had a massive clandestine nuclear weapons program that covered several different techniques to enrich uranium.
That would be defector information supplied by the notoriously unreliable Ahmed Chalabi, head of the Iraqi National Congress, the self-appointed expatriate Iraqi shadow government.
We talked to Chalabi on multiple occasions, and we saw that, they were hyping the type of information they put out.
He is so determined that he has made repeated covert attempts to acquire high-specification aluminum tubes from 11 different countries, even after inspections resumed.
Yet again, the aluminum tubes.
Let me tell you,
I was incredibly disappointed when he brought out comments about the aluminum tubes. I felt betrayed as an American and a scientist.
I can trace the story of a senior terrorist operative telling how Iraq provided training in these weapons to al-Qaeda. Fortunately, this operative is now detained, and he has told his story.
Powell is referring to Ibn al-Sheikh al-Libi, the same detainee the CIA labeled a fabricator.
Zarqawi and his infrastructure with a built-in ally.
Powell takes 90 minutes to run through his persuasive litany of evidence. Much of it will turn out to be, at best, inaccurate.
Thank you, Mr. President.
If you look at that speech in retrospect, there's a little too much of what we think and not enough of what we don't know. There's too much certitude in the speech. That's not Secretary Powell's problem. That's on us as intelligence professionals.
Secretary of State Powell set aside his personal misgivings and staked his global reputation for integrity on this one moment, selling the case for war.
Though neither Powell nor anyone else from the State Department team intentionally lied, we did participate in a hoax.
I have a cold, and I took NyQuil, but I'm still stubbed up.
Truth is, NyQuil doesn't unstuff your nose.
What?
Alka-Seltzer Plus Liquid Gel speeds relief to your worst cold symptoms, plus has a decongestant for your stuffy nose.
Thanks.
That's the cold truth.
I'd never used a contractor before and didn't know where to start.
At Angie's List, you'll find reviews on everything from home repair to healthcare.